Welcome. I think I know everybody, but in case I don't, my name is Becky Megas, she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and chief care connector for women in sustainability. Welcome to today's webinar that is a part of our Community Voices series. It's so great to see actually several of our community members who will be a part of this community series. Katrina was last week, Jesse is July, right, Jesse? So excited to have our community members sharing with us their expertise. So for those that don't know, Women in Sustainability is an inclusive social and environmental justice nonprofit that is dedicated to caring for the people that care for the planet through community advocacy, resources, and education to create a sustainable and equitable future through the feminist viewpoint and leadership. We really strive to create a safe space for like-minded and diverse individuals to create purposeful connections and conversations. All are welcome in our community. So as I noted, we will be recording today's session. While we always love to see your faces, we also understand if you'd like to turn your camera off so that you don't show up on video in the future. As I mentioned before, closed captions are turned on. You can toggle those on or off. As we work to be an inclusive organization, we do encourage you to change your pronouns and your name. You can do this by clicking the three dots and renaming yourself. And we just encourage you to do this as you feel comfortable. For today's session, we will have a presentation from Brie. You can change your view by clicking up the top where it says view. You can do a speaker view and you can do it side-by-side panel so you can see the presentation and the speaker. You can also do side-by-side with gallery and the presentation as well, or you can just change it so you have your speaker available. So whatever viewpoint works for you, please feel free to change that. We're going to ask for you to stay muted during our presentation. It's just an opportunity so that we can hear our speaker and give her the most opportunity to give her information to us without interruption. And we will have an opportunity to answer some questions and ask some questions throughout the presentation. When you do this, we just ask that you use those little icons down at the bottom, those reaction icons, and be able to raise your hand and we'll be able to call on you, which will help alleviate speaking over top of each other. We'll just let you know when it is your turn to unmute. If you'd like, you can also ask questions in the chat. Some of you have already opened up that chat and already utilizing it. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and open up the chat and say hello to everybody. We always love to know who is joining us in the sessions. And then you can also private message me if you want to send any messages my way as well. I'll be helping Brie moderate today's conversation. We do also, in addition to asking questions in the chat, we encourage you to repeat statements that our presenter mentions that you like. So if you hear something you like, share it. If you hear, I don't know of any relevant information, please feel free to share that as well. Support our speaker. We all know this is still a strange world that we live in. Feel free to support our speaker by clicking your fingers, clapping your hands. If your camera is off, again, use those reaction buttons to show some love throughout the presentation to just make it feel like a little more in person than in a virtual space. All right, I think that is it. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker so we can go ahead and get started on today's webinar. I am thrilled to have Brie Zoller joining us today to talk about embedding sustainability in business operations. Brie genuinely loves helping those who are following their passions by making it a little easier for them to reach their goals. Her professional history working in highly structured industries, such as aerospace, construction, utilities, and mining, allows her to sharply focus her intuitive drive for continuous improvement and systems development. Brie Z Operations is a natural extension of this focus, as her involvement in regional and national networks brought her into contact with many of the small business leaders looking for support. She discovered that supporting clients by applying structure to drive efficiency in their internal operations is a win-win. She feeds off her passionate clients to gain the necessary next level in their growing operations to save time and money. Your time is a precious resource, and each dollar earned or saved matters. Brie wants to help you succeed and make your life less stressful while she's at it. While not working, you can find Brie in the mountains, skiing with her husband, on a trip in their 1977 camper, or hiking with their darling Emmy, who we've seen in many of the photos. Please help me give a warm Women in Sustainability welcome to Brie.
Thank you all so much. And I did, Rebecca, I'm not forgetting, there was a request to see Emmy. She's right here, 1 second. I'm gonna pick up this little sleeping pooch. All right, so here's the Emmy dog. Can you look at the camera? She's like, what are you doing to me? So this is my little sweetie dog, Emmy. There you go, Rebecca. So you guys, it's so wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to talk about my passion area of operations. I had a fun conversation earlier today with a gentleman whose business is like, they're in startup phase and it's just fighting fires constantly. And he was talking about all of these very stressful business areas. And I just like kept getting excited. It's like, ooh, tell me more about that problem. I know how to fix that. Are you experiencing this? Ooh, yeah, I bet you are. So with that, I want to make sure that this conversation's like that as well. I want this to be engaging. I want to bring in your own experiences that you've had. I have several questions throughout my presentation for the group. I encourage you can enter your response into the chat, or feel free, raise your hand and you can come off mute and we'll hear from you live. But with that, let me first figure out this whole screen sharing thing. All right. We're going to get all organized here. All right, beautiful. Can you guys see my screen? Wonderful. All right. So Becky, I'm just going to ask if you can let me know when people raise their hands. That's the only thing I think I need help on.
No problem.
All right, wonderful. So hello, everybody. Today we're talking about embedding sustainability in business operations. And one thing I will mention, I mentioned this a little later on as well, everything that we're talking about today does not apply to just sustainability. This applies to every single business value you could have. So I'm going to ask this initial question to the group. Think about your current or previous employers and an effective business value that you've seen implemented in the workplace. So this could be sustainability, DEI, safety, quality, customer service, anything along those lines, those business values that you might see come up. How have you seen them effectively, or what have you seen effectively implemented in the workplace? So that's just the first broad question of what have you seen effectively implemented with your employers? Got mentoring, DEI council, listening and open feedback. Safety. That's a good one, Rebecca. I'm impressed. Culture of collaboration. Ways to change. Okay, nice. So I'm curious, as a follow-up question to this, now that you're thinking about this business value that you've seen well implemented, volunteer programs, Anna, I love those. You know I'm a part of those. How do you know that it mattered? How did your organization, your employer, demonstrate that this was important? How did they support employees to be a part of that, to train them, to give them the resources to do so, to give them a voice to do so? How do we know that it mattered and that they were putting their money where their mouth was? So that could be what you knew from them, what you felt from them, or that you saw. This one might be a little longer if anyone wants to raise their hand and come off mute for a second. So Jesse, there's zero staff turnover, people wanting to stay at their job. That's a huge indicator. Having lower employee turnover means that they are aligned. When we have that high employee turnover, that means we're broken. Absolutely. The staff found their sweet spot and their value to the team. And not only that, I would also venture a guess, Sage, that not only did they knew what their value was, they knew how they fit into this overall strategy or the overall business. So Taryn, you have decisions were made through a lens of these values. Yes, oh, I love that. So whenever we're making a decision about something that we're doing in our business, we're questioning, are we applying, does this align with our values, and how is it aligning with our values? And then continuous improvement. Absolutely. And then direct and regular feedback, increased engagement, increased word of mouth citing. Absolutely. It's a conversation. We're talking about it regularly. These are all excellent examples that you guys have provided here. Oh, and Sage, our clients are happy. Our clients see that we're happy at work. That matters so much when clients can see that you've got an engaged and happy team. They want to be there and support that as well, because they know that you're living in accordance with your values. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to have structure around this, how to embed sustainability and these values in business operations. For employees to support a business, they need to have the resources to do so. They need to be engaged in that value. They need to understand why it matters. And then they have to be reminded over and over again. I think one thing that Anna had mentioned was having that conversation and that feedback. That's something that needs to happen repeatedly so that they're reminded of it and it's constantly being applied to them. And again, we're going to be talking through a lens of sustainability today. This can be applied to any business value or priority that you have. So we've got this fun term here, operations management system, which might make you feel like snoring already. But what a business operations management system is, it's a blueprint for how a company does work, and it supports the entire organization from the top down. This means everyone knows what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it, and how it's aligned with the business strategy. And not only that, but the best kind of operations management systems are one that have feedback loops in them, so that there's auditing and feedback mechanisms so that we know when the system's working and when it's not working. And then when it's not working, we have opportunities for improvement, and we take that opportunity for improvement and we actually run with it. Operations management systems have many different components to them, including goals and metrics, communications, written requirements and instructions, employee training, employee engagement, audits. I'm going to go over all of these individually on the next few slides. So the first one that we have here, starting all the way at the top, when we're looking at our operations management system, is goals and metrics. How we know what we're working towards. So just like we might have revenue or production goals and metrics, we can also track sustainability metrics. So I'm curious for the group here, what are some examples of sustainability related metrics that you've seen? All right, so Jackie, we've got % of waste reduction or diversion, whether or not there's recycling and composting, energy reduction. In landscaping, we tracked how many gallons of gas we saved by converting to battery-powered tools. I like that. Water usage. Amenities like electrical vehicle charging. Nice. Yeah, so we're going to talk about a lot of these and what types of metrics that these might fall into, and the different values between the two of them. And I'm also curious, why do you guys think that goals and metrics are important? So this is something that sometimes we just feel that we have to do them because that's what businesses do, right? Why are goals and metrics important? Sage. If it isn't measured, it can't be managed. So people know what to prioritize, a visual understanding of where you are, tracking success, knowing if you're making an impact. Ooh, yes. Staff gets excited when they see a success. You are so right on that. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. And what we pay attention to is what gets attention. Yes, yes. All of you are absolutely correct in that. So goals connect us to our mission and to our strategy and actions, just like many of you said. That means that our goals, those numbers that we might be working towards, are what we're getting from our overall strategy and the actions that we're taking to get there. It's that connection there. And the metrics portion of it allows us to define our success. Are we meeting those goals? And how do we know that we're meeting those goals? Now we've got two different types of metrics that we work towards. One of them is called lagging indicators, and the other one is called leading indicators. I'll go over leading in a second, but lagging indicators, those are an output after an event has occurred. So that could be energy consumption, emissions, water usage, waste, supply chain, everything that many folks here have already mentioned. That means something's already occurred in history. We cannot go back and change it, nor does it indicate any efforts that we're making to change it. So I think lagging indicators are a great way to know that whether or not our efforts are successful, but they cannot be the only way that we're measuring if we're on track towards our goals or not. That's where leading indicators come in. And this is input before an event occurs. So this could be having sustainability projects and how many employees are involved with them, if they're on track. It could be environmental audits that we are taking the initiative before anything's occurred to actually look at how we're aligned. It could be employee training, making sure that we've got regular training and people are involved in that. And there's a number of leading indicators out there and leading metrics. These are just an example of a few. And I'll give you an example as well of more of a real example, if you will. So let's say we're at a restaurant that wants to source locally. We want to make sure that all of our food is coming from, ideally, some within 25 miles, some within 50 miles, some within 100 miles. And right now, most of our food that we're getting is coming from, thousands of miles away because they're getting them through the same methods that a lot of us might be getting our food through. So the way that we would align that with goals and metrics is, first off, we identify what the baseline is for where that food is currently being sourced. And that means it's already happened in the past. We've got those lagging indicators, and that might show us what our carbon footprint is with how we're sourcing our food, how far that food is coming from, the number of miles away. It could be the pounds of food waste that we might be experiencing because, we have to order within a certain amount of time, it gets here and then we can't use all of it, things along those lines. So those are all lagging indicators of things that have happened in the past, and we can use those as our baseline. And then let's say we develop our goals of, okay, we want to make sure that we get, 25% of our food within 25 miles. We get 50% of our food within 50 miles, and then the last 25% could be, 100 and beyond. Our leading indicators to let us know how we're going about achieving that would be the activities that we're doing towards finding those local businesses. It could be the number of meetings that we're having and the success rate that we're having with finding good suppliers. It could be anything related to those efforts of trying to figure out how to move forward from that. And then afterwards, once we've implemented this, our new lagging indicators would be the percentage of food that's sourced within 25 miles or 50 miles or 100 miles and beyond. Our new lagging indicators would be what our reduced carbon footprint is. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. Our leading indicators are the efforts that we're putting in order to combat those lagging indicators. And the lagging ones are just things that have happened in the past. We can't do anything about them now, but we can make efforts moving forward. So those are goals and metrics in a nutshell. Communications is a huge aspect in our management system. So we've got these great goals. We've got, these metrics that we're working towards. How do we make sure that employees actually know what we're doing and what our mission is, and if we're aligned with it? Consistent and regular messaging from leadership is absolutely key in this area. They need to share what is important, why it's important, and what we're doing about it. And not only that, I would add in what you can do about it as well. You being the employee, this is what I'm doing as the business leader. These are the expectations that I have for you as the employee. So I'm curious, I have here another question for the group. What are effective internal communications that you've seen or experienced? What are things where your business reached out to you, whether it was conversations or emails or notices, things along those lines? What were effective communications that you've experienced? Group Slack messages with positive notes. When the message comes across authentically and frequently. Jackie, I love that point. When you actually know that the business leader cares about what they're saying and that they actually mean it and that it's not just lip service. Employees are not dumb. They can see through when things are just lip service. And yes, regular communication as well. Jesse, ongoing communication, asking questions as they arise and as a project gets implemented. I think that asking questions is actually one of the best forms of leadership. If you can ask employees instead of telling them, that it first off empowers the employee, it gets them more engaged, it increases buy-in, it makes them think outside of the box, and it gets them to think like you, because the more questions that you ask them, they'll be able to almost start predicting, what are the questions that I'm going to be asked when we're talking about this? And how can I start thinking about that in advance? You're almost grooming them to be future business leaders when you do that. Communication breakdowns at your old job, you saw a lack of follow through. Yes, that is, I talk about that on one of the last slides, Katrina, that's very important. And Jesse, your staff called you out on an accidental bias you were building into a curriculum, and you were proud to have a culture that allows and rewards that behavior. Yes, absolutely. So that's that genuine piece of it, right? That, you're putting your money where your mouth is. You are walking the talk. You're not just saying, do as I say, not as I do. Beautiful. Great examples, you guys. So there's a few different methods that we have here for communications. You can have it as a regular meeting agenda item. If it's something you truly care about, have it be a part of your daily, weekly meetings and have it as an agenda item to talk about. It can be included in trainings. Even if the training isn't about that specific topic, you can still bring in sustainability for operations related training. Having visuals all over the time, all over the place, to show people what, I don't know if you guys have ever walked into an office before or maybe a conference room, and they have pictures up on the wall of what it should look like when you leave that room and what it should be set up like. All the chairs should be back in the place, all of the cords put back where they belong, all of the whiteboards cleared off. Having those visuals in place helps as a reminder for people to do that. Having all hands meetings with that open communication. We can also do company internal emails as reminders and newsletters. Having an internal newsletter is just as important as having an external newsletter for all of your customers or your clients. And then with that, what I find to be by far the best is informal one-on-one or small group conversations. This is where I worked at a facility once where the GM had 5,000 people under her, and she would block out 2 hours a day to go and walk the manufacturing floor and to just have conversations with employees about safety, because that was her highest priority. They had the highest injury rate in the whole company. She was a new GM. She genuinely cared about safety and wanted to make sure that they got there. So she would go out and talk to people one-on-one or in these small groups, just saying, tell me what your thoughts are. Where do you think we're failing? Where do you think we could improve on this? Having those conversations shows that you truly care, but also allows you to get a perspective as a business leader that you might not get otherwise. Employees are experts in the work that they are doing. They are going to have insights that you would not have because you're not in their shoes. So I'll tie all of this sort of communication methods into, let's say we're interested in reducing our energy consumption in our business operations. So that's a very, very specific thing. We want to make sure we're turning the lights off. We're turning our computers off. We're trying to use lower energy consuming equipment and light bulbs and all those fun things. If that's what we genuinely care about, and that's something that we're working towards, let's make that a regular meeting agenda item. We're going to talk about it on a daily basis. Even if it's just for 2 minutes, we're giving it that time and we're bringing attention to it. Having those reminders in those situations for people to turn off those energy consumers when they're done for the day. When we're in trainings, let's say we're teaching people how to use equipment. That doesn't mean that the training has to only be about using the equipment. We can also tie in sustainability of having proper maintenance on it, makes sure that we're not overusing equipment, or I'm sorry, overusing energy. So make sure if you notice anything's wrong that we get a maintenance ticket in to fix it. When you're done for the day, make sure that this are all turned off so that we're making sure that we're saving energy in that way as well. And why that matters. We can also have reminders in company newsletters and having signs all over the place. Turn off the light before you leave. Make sure your computer's turned off. And then having the conversation with folks, as I mentioned, those one-on-one conversations, asking them, this is a mission that we're working towards. I'm curious, what are your thoughts around it? Are there things that we're missing? Where do you see opportunities for us to save energy? And those employees will probably come up with other better ideas than what we can come up with being at the top. And they know when they're having that conversation that first off, you truly care about it. And not only that, but if you actually take that effort to get those ideas, it's going to make a bigger impact for your organization. Yeah, Darcy, reminders, they're huge. Awesome. All right, so our next one, written requirements and instructions. This is like such a snore for a lot of people, writing down standard. I'm gonna also say written requirements and instructions. That also includes standard operating procedures or SOPs, standard work, operating instructions, processes, all of those fall under that same bucket. But if it's a requirement, and a lot of businesses struggle with this, especially when they're small businesses, especially when they're like in growth mode as well, and they just don't have regular systems in place yet. If it's a requirement, it should be written down. If a task requires an environmental component, it should be included in the work instructions for that task, not in a separate document. I started my career off in safety, which is why I have so many safety anecdotes around this. And an example of where I would see this disconnect is you would have operating instructions for a heavy piece of machinery. And then on the flip side, you would have a whole separate document to go and look at the safety requirements for that task as well. Nobody ever went to go and look at those two documents. They just went to look at the operating instructions and then left it there. Why would they go and look at the separate safety instructions? Making sure that we include everything as a part of the actual task makes it so that it's all inclusive and it's indicated that it is equal and not separate. An example around having this would be supply chain management. Let's say we're working on supply chain management in our organization. We want to make sure that we are sourcing ethically made and sustainably made products that we're going to use in our organization. Now, in order to have that supported from a written down process, we can actually write down the whole process. This is how we go through our supply chain management. This is how we source our products that we use here. And then here are the criteria that we're looking for when we're sourcing those items. These are the sustainability requirements. These are the ethical requirements that we're looking for, and have that be a part of the entire instruction manual. Providing checklists is also an incredible way to support employees so that as they're walking through, they can check things off, and including any of those aspects from sustainability, the environment, safety, customer satisfaction, whatever it may be. And it's also important for employees to be able to reference these things in the future. If we just tell someone how to do something once, we can't expect them to remember that. Especially, I don't know, do you guys remember, being in a new job the first day or the first week and you are just getting fire hosed with information? It is overwhelming. It is impossible to remember everything, because also your headspace is, I need to make a good impression. How am I going to remember everything? I just need to make a good impression. Having everything written out means that employees can go back and refer to them. Have them stored in a central location where people can just go back and look at them on a central drive or the cloud or whatever it might be. And then not only that, but that also helps you to hold them accountable. Let's say they're just not engaged. Maybe they just don't care or something along those lines. You need to have actual documentation to support what you're asking of them so that you can sort of then go through the processes of, these are the expectations of your roles and your responsibilities. If you cannot follow up on these, we will go elsewhere, take the next steps with HR. So those are written requirements and instructions. And then employee training. I love employee training. Ooh, Katrina, I love that. Having a daily reference guide and making sure that it was updated and cleaned out monthly. Yes, that's so effective, particularly when you have employees involved in it as well. It's so effective. So then employee training, and training is important to make sure that employees have a same understanding of the work that they're doing and how to do it and what environmental efforts are tied into the work that they're doing. There's a number of different types of training out there. There's on-the-job training, there's classroom training, virtual training, and then new employee and recurring training. Now, I'm curious, this is just going to be a question to the group here, of think about the best training that you've been to. What made it so effective? This is in your experience. It could be employee training that you went to. It could be external training. What made it effective? Katrina getting buy-in. A lot of leading us to the answers instead of giving us the answers. Yep. Content and scenarios that were directly related to the roles and the functions, showing relevancy. I like those. Personal stories and examples. Yep, absolutely. Real time, how could we have done that better in the moment? Yes, like live training, using analogies, mixed media approach, absolutely. So when we're looking at creating effective training for our employees, a few things to keep in mind from what we've heard here. Some of the things that work best are doing them on the job and live, actually tying it into how we're doing what we're doing, not just sitting at a computer and clicking through. That is not an effective form of training. It's not going to create any form of engagement. Actually having the employee be a part of the training, meaning that you're asking them open-ended questions and they're providing what they think the correct response is, or an experience that they've had before, how they've handled something similar before. So that way you're making them actually think. When you ask them questions, they're thinking about it, which creates more buy-in and more understanding. Oh my gosh, Rebecca. Yes, muted and sped up so many LinkedIn Learning videos when it was a KPI for your bonus at your last job. I did the same exact thing. I don't know if you guys know who Grant Cardone is. I had to do 3 of his sales trainings a day, and it put it on mute. It was put it on mute and click through, guess on the quizzes. I usually got it right. It is, yeah. Now, let's say you went to a lot of Excel trainings and you don't know how to do it. The best way to get people to actually engage with that is to have them walk it through with you. Have them try it out. Give them the mouse, give them the piece of equipment, whatever it might be, and say, okay, these are the things that you're going to do. Touch here, click this button, go here. Have them actually do it, because then it helps ingrain it into their subconscious. When they actually do something, as opposed to seeing it, it becomes ingrained with that muscle memory in their subconscious. So doing that, having them do it is incredibly effective. Awesome, wonderful. And I'll pull in an example for this as well when we're thinking about employee training. Let's talk about waste management. Let's say we're working with we're in an organization that cares, we work with a ton of different waste, and we have different waste streams where we're making sure that we separate everything properly, and we've got cardboard going one place, metals going another place, plastics going in another place, and we want to make sure that it's properly managed. Having the correct employee training around this might look like, first off, having that onboarding training. Hey, you're a new employee here. Let's walk over to our waste management area, and we're going to do a little hands-on training of how to properly sort our wastes and why it matters. And then you're going to have them actually go and do it and separate everything out so that they know what it feels like. Not only that, but then having visuals posted up there so that they can see this is where everything goes. It's something that happens quite a bit, particularly when it comes to these sort of softer areas, if you will, of like sustainability and DEI and safety. Sometimes we have a tendency to assume that people know the right way to do things, or the way that we do things here. That opens up the opportunity for people to make mistakes, and not in a good way. They find out after the fact if they were doing it wrong, and then they feel as though they weren't supported, and they feel that there's an aspect of their culture that they missed. When we include everything as a part of the training, saying, hey, I know recycling's super basic, but we're going to make sure that we do it right here. So we're going to have a fun little activity here, this team against this team, to gamify, to your point. Then it's going to be more effective, and they're actually going to own it in the future. All right. And then our second to last piece that we have here is employee engagement when it comes to our operations management systems. So I'm curious, why do you think it's important to get employees involved in sustainability efforts? To get them excited about it, for team building. You need everybody to help and make those ripples. Doesn't matter what the initiative is. If the employees aren't brought in, you won't have success. Jesse, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Um, a lot of little voices versus one loud voice. Yes, yes. Especially if we want our employees to support our business, if we want them to be a part of our organization, to care for it as if it was their own, their voice needs to matter. So employee engagement efforts are important in order to gain that buy-in, to get them, and not only that, something that is so crucial that we always have a tendency to forget is that we're going to gain important insights for how the work is actually performed. So that if we're proposing projects or changes to the way that we do work, the people who are actually doing the work can say, hold on a second, have you considered this? Have you considered the impact on what might happen if we do X, Y, and Z? Or I've got a better idea on how to do this that is going to be a lot easier. So we have a few examples of employee engagement efforts here. It could include annual performance evaluations. So that means including sustainability as a part of someone's performance and saying at the beginning of the year, let's work out what your goals are and let's tie in some sustainability efforts. What do you want to work towards this year? Where do you want to put your effort? And then at the end of the year, having a debrief conversation of how did you do on this? How do you feel you were successful in this area or not? Another example that we have is employee-led committees with leadership support. So this means that you have employees involved in sustainability efforts. They might even be leading those sustainability efforts. The crucial aspect of this is that they have leadership support, both with their presence, but then also the pocketbook. If you have employee-led committees that aren't getting backed up by leadership, they're going to fail. So it's important to make sure that leaders are saying, yes, I want you to work towards this. I will support you. Here's a check, go and do it. You can also have department representatives for sustainability and environmental efforts. So that means you could have sort of a committee, if you will, at a high level, and making sure that all of those members come from different departments. So you have that cross-departmental access. Everybody knows what other businesses are doing. And then not only that, but when you have a representative in the group, that's a point person for the other employees to go to. It's a peer for them to go to. So they can say, hey, I don't want to sound stupid asking this to my leader. Where's my peer that I can go and talk to about this? Where can I have an honest conversation? Maybe it's an awkward conversation. And then we have leadership sharing and celebrating employee efforts with the entire organization. So that means leaders are regularly celebrating the employees, saying, look at what this group did, this project that they did, this was the impact that they made. We are proud of them. They are on our team. We are so excited to have them here. We can't wait to see what other efforts come out here. Because when leadership starts to celebrate those wins and they start to highlight employee efforts, it's going to get employees excited to put themselves out there. I will mention one little thing with this is that sometimes individuals don't necessarily like being recognized by an entire organization. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If it's on an individual basis, teams, it's usually much easier. No one's afraid of being in the spotlight. But if it's one person, asking their permission first before you share it with the entire organization, and you make them stand up in an all hands or put their picture on the newsletter, making sure that they're comfortable with that. Because if they're not comfortable in the spotlight, then they will actually pull back from doing anything in the future. So just a key thing to keep in mind there when it comes to employee engagement. And then, yes, consent matters. All right, and then how do I know if I'm doing it right? Okay, Brie, I did all of these things. I put in my written requirements. I've got my trainings. I've got my communications. How do I know if I'm doing it right? We know that we are successful in embedding these sustainability in the organization by doing a few different activities. First off, having regular assessments or audits. So that means going back and auditing against our operations management system. We've got all of these written requirements here. Are these written requirements actually happening? We're supposed to be doing these activities. Are these activities actually happening? And then getting feedback from employees. This could be through anonymous surveys. You could bring in consultants to do focus groups. if you truly believe that you have a culture where everyone can be open and honest, maybe just doing, I know one leader who would once a week do lunch with small groups of shop floor employees in this, very similar to the general manager story that I shared before with 5,000 employees. It was at a separate facility, but I think she had 200 employees underneath her, and she would have 3 of them join her for a pizza lunch once a week and just get their feedback and have honest conversations. And then I know someone mentioned this before, fix those areas of opportunity. If we have gaps in our assessments or our audits, come up with an action plan to fix them. Same with when employees give us feedback, and I cannot stress this enough. If employees give us feedback, if we don't take action, that shows them we don't care. We don't care about getting their feedback, and we don't actually care about the subject matter that they were talking about. If it's something that you can't do, which is totally reasonable, sometimes there was one guy I remember, he wanted to implement a project that would have cost us like $1 million or something. Great idea, would have been fabulous, just not cost feasible. So having a conversation with the guy saying, hey, I loved this idea. I just want to let you know, we're not going to be able to do it because of X, Y, and Z reasons, but I'm curious if you have any other ideas. Do you have any other thoughts that we might be able to put in place? These are some of the ideas I had, but I want to make sure that I'm taking your ideas in here as well. So that's how we can make sure that we are successful. So with that, that is all I have for my presentation, folks. And I'm curious if we have any questions.
Amazing, great. Yeah, definitely. If you have questions, and pop them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and we can ask those questions as you unmute. Looks like I think Jesse, so I'll hold your hand first.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I get a lot from people is, okay, I have these ideas. I think I have a plan for them. I see these places that can do it, but I don't know how to approach my boss and how to do it. And so what are your tips for people who are employees who want to start generating some of these pieces and have a hard time figuring out how to think about it in terms of the cost-effective model, or think about the approach factor?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So there's 2 things I would make sure that I would do in this situation. So one of them is understanding how that project ties in with the overall business strategy, the business goals, or the leadership's values. Say, hey, you've got this goal in place. I have an idea for how we can achieve that goal. So that's first and foremost of making sure that it ties into what that business leader cares about. The second thing that I would suggest having is a business case. And there are so many beautiful templates out there, but saying, for example, we're experiencing this issue that costs us, $200 a month, let's say. The fix would be $2,000. For us to fix this and get it changed, that means it would pay off in 10 months. And then we would save $100 a month moving forward. Being able to line it out like that and show your employer, this is what it's costing us now, this is how much it would be to fix it, and these are what our savings would be. They love it when it comes down to like the pocketbook, seriously. Just like, tell me how to save money, tell me how to meet my goals. Okay, sounds good. So those are the two suggestions that I would have in that area, Jesse.
Thank you. Miss Katrina.
Hi. Okay, so you said the magic word that I had the question about, which was templates. So as a small business owner, I have so many awesome ideas. I have so many things, but I have no way to like quantify them and then to like share that with the world. Like even right now, I'm trying to figure out a way to make my business have a more sustainability message, because all of the wood that I get for my raised garden beds is all sustainably sourced. And so like even just like fitting that into my messaging and then having a way to even track that, like the diversions or the whatever. So like,
Mhm.
like, do you have a packet for that? Can I buy one?
Sounds like a heck of a conversation that you and I need to have offline. But what I would suggest starting from is figuring out what do I think success looks like in this area? Where do I want to be? Do I want to supply everything secondhand? And if so, then looking at, okay, everything that I'm purchasing, that I'm getting for my business, how much money am I spending on it if it's new? How much money am I spending on it if it's used? And then having projects in place to try to figure out how to source everything secondhand and tracking your progress when it comes to, and you would have a spreadsheet where you could just plug those numbers into and then be able to see your success in those areas. As far as messaging goes, I know a great sustainability copywriter who would, she's working on my website right now for me. So I would highly recommend, if you want to, but share that stuff in your newsletter, share it on your website.
I mean, but that's like assuming that I'm doing the newsletter bit, you know, like
True.
all that stuff's hard. And on my website, like I'm going to have a ton of traffic right now because of my farmer's market. So like, how do I make sure I engage that sustainability message now while it's coming through in time for all that traffic? And do I have time for that? Because, you know, you're doing it all when you're the only person in your business. So it's hard to get all that up and running. And that's why I'm super glad I'm friends with you and Jesse and everyone in this room. So
let's have a long conversation around this.
Deal.
Sounds like lots of drinks are in order for that one.
Yeah.
Darcy actually had a question. She had put her hand back down, but I'm gonna go to Darcy and then I'll go back to Anna's question in the chat.
Thanks, guys. Brie, I'm loving your presentation. I don't know if I'm one of the only solopreneurs here, but I was just kind of wondering if you have any other thoughts and tips aside from just like my own energy use that I could bring to my business processes. I do digital marketing and I'm always steering folks towards like lean websites. I know we have a woman in the group I met who does kind of like energy efficient website building, which is dope. But other than me just like not leaving power on when I don't need to and not using paper, I'm not sure what else I can do as a solopreneur to have better business practices.
Yeah. So a couple areas that you could look into is any equipment or supplies that you're getting from your organization, that you're getting those sourced either ethically, sustainably, or secondhand. Like, I'm going to have to get a new laptop soon. I'm probably going to get it through Back Market or Apple refurbished options. Another suggestion that I would have is comparing how many meetings you're doing virtually versus in person, because when you're in person, you're driving there as opposed to doing it virtually, then you're not wasting that gas. Another one that I learned about recently is attaching an email versus sending someone a link is a huge, like, I want to say like 4 times difference or something as far as energy usage goes when you send an attachment as opposed to uploading something to like a Google Drive and sending them a link to it. So those are some small areas as far as solopreneurs go. I like where your head's at though. That's fun.
Thank you. That's so great. I need a new computer soon. I hadn't even thought about buying that repurposed. So thank you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Brie. By the way, Katrina, if you didn't catch that, digital marketing person.
Darcy Nelson. Yeah.
Okay.
We've talked. I know her. Hi, Darcy.
All right. Perfect. Just making sure all the connections are here. All right. And we go back to her question. She had the question of what has been something that lands in your top 3 favorite shifts to a business doing better?
So number 1 is foundations. Get your foundations in place to support your employees is the number 1 thing that I would suggest to any organization before you try to do any initiative. And it sounds so basic and it sounds so boring, but really getting that management system in place is huge. Another thing that I love is when a company tries to do a new initiative, for example, even if it's something that an employee is leading or a lower level manager is leading, having the company leader say, this is an effort that it, like the introduction to the whole group saying, this is something that this person is doing. I am on board with it. I support it. I can't wait to see what comes out of it, because then having that kind of oversight at the beginning of a project really gets people on board. So that's something that I love to see whenever there's new initiatives in place. And a third one for a business doing better is cross-departmental employee meetings. I just like, it is so huge. And people become a lot more efficient after they start having those.
I love that. It's amazing. Sage had asked, what about becoming a B Corp?
Oh, so I don't know much about becoming a B Corp, though I do know a B Corp consultant that I'd be happy to connect you with. The great things about becoming a B Corp is that it holds you accountable through the certification process to being a sustainable organization. And then you also get that nice little label that people love to see, particularly when they're interested in supporting more sustainable organizations. It's an easy way for them to identify you. But there's a woman who's in Women in Sustainability named Corey Clark, and she is a B Corp consultant who would be able to speak much better to that than I can.
Well, and I'm just wondering, just kind of like how in design we'll use the lead guidelines as a metric, even if we're not going for a lead. And so it's like B Corp, if you look to what they require of a company and then scale appropriately for your business. I mean, we're only 19 people, so it wouldn't scale the same as a 300 person company, you know? So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. And then another thing to check out in addition to that would be the, I'm forgetting the name right now, the EU projects that they're working towards. Does anyone know what I'm forgetting the whole name.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of it either.
I know someone's got that. Anna, I feel like you have it. Are you still on here? Well, the EU has like 21 things that they're working on, and that would be another good thing to track towards.
Yeah,
thank you. I got
SDGs.
SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Perfect. And we will send out links to the women who are mentioned here. So Lane is the person who does the website development. Corey Clark is positive B. We'll send, I think, or B positive, sorry. So we'll send her information, as well as Kelsey Oates, who does the copywriting, sustainable copywriting. So we'll send out those that were mentioned as well in our follow-up. Darcy, happy to include your stuff too, if you'd like to send me a note and let me know that works for you. And our last question that we have is, what do you see as the hope for the future when it relates to embedding sustainability into business operations?
Everybody taking little steps. I don't think it needs to be one person changing the world. I think if everybody takes little steps to get there, we're going to get there a lot faster.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to end. Please help me give a very warm thank you to Brie for presenting for us today. Thank you so much, Brie.
Thank you, Brie.
Yes, yeah, you can unmute, so pop it in the chat. As a thank you, of course, from Women in Sustainability, we will be planting trees in your name through our partnership with One Tree Planted. So you will receive a certificate today from them. We are planting currently for a national forest and forest recovery, as we know that is really important for our state currently. And for everybody else, please join us coming up. We've got lots of community voices. Next month, we are focusing on zero waste with Carrie Martin Haley. We have June, Lisa Cutter will be presenting on advocacy. And then July, we've got Jesse, who is joining us today, who is going to be presenting on, remind me, Jesse, real fast, I blanked.
kindness and how to have hard conversations with people who don't want to talk about sustainability.
There you go, conversation. So stay tuned, come and join us. If everybody's free Monday, May 2nd, we are having a big Earth Month celebration at Odell Brewing at Sloan's Lake in Edgewater. First 50 people receive a free beverage, a courtesy of Odell. We'll have pizza, we'll be celebrating. It's just gonna be a great way to end this fantastic month. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you again to Brie for providing this wonderful information for us today. So thank you.
Thank you all. This was fun. All right. Bye.